Awesome. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome. So happy to see you all today. Just going to go ahead and give a couple minutes for folks to continue to filter on in. And in the meantime, you can go ahead and enjoy this wonderful slide and get pumped for our speaker today. How you doing, Joe? Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. All right. Well, let me just go over a couple of housekeeping items while everyone filters in. So my name is Jenna Quinn, and it's my pleasure as the Assistant Director of Alumni Engagement to welcome you all to this edition of the 49er Industry Chats. A couple of housekeeping items. We would like to inform everyone here that the session is being recorded. And so what that means for you is that this is going to be available on demand at our website at www.csulb.edu/alumni. Feel free to view it again, send it to a friend, or, send it around to anyone who may be interested. And since this is a webinar format, we're going to go ahead and encourage all of you to use the Q&A box to submit any questions that you have for our guest speaker today. You don't have to wait until the end. Just go ahead and whenever a question pops into your head, just pop it into that Q&A box. And so with that, I'm very happy to welcome our guest speaker today, Joe Sparks. Hi, Joe.
Hi.
I'm going to read Joe's bio really quick, and then we'll get started. Joe has 40 years of experience in electrical engineering and aerospace. Joe began his career in the 80s with TRW Systems, now called Northrop-Grumman, in Redondo Beach, designing hardware for space-based power conversion applications while earning his MS in electrical engineering from Long Beach State. He continued his work in power electronic designs and project lead roles at Artesyn Power and Rantec Power Systems in the 90s. And Joe's worked at Raytheon Technologies and Goleta in design and management roles for Raytheon electronic warfare and vision system application products since 2001. And during that time, Joe has worked extensively with the recruitment of university students and graduates from multiple universities in California, and has a passionate interest in the hiring and career development of college graduates and interns. Joe has served as on an adjunct faculty at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo since 2012, teaching electrical engineering lab courses. Outside of his work career, Joe was elected in 2006 to the board of Los Osos Community Service District, where he served as president and vice president. He graduated with a BS in engineering science from Cal Poly in 1982. And his wife, Beth, who I hope is tuned in today, is also a Long Beach State alumna as well. All right, that was a lot, Joe. Yeah, you can go ahead. Feel free to share your screen now. And let's get started on the wonderful presentation you have for us today.
Okay, and thank you, Gina and Alana and Lucia, our panelists. And so if you do have any questions, feel free to post them or ask for Gina to moderate them, make this interactive as possible. I'm going to weave, discussions of engineering and education and recruiting back and forth throughout my presentation. It's a bit of a hodgepodge. And so this is the information that Gina so artfully presented, and I'll go on to the next slide. There it is. Okay. So this is just to give you a little bit of, who and my family are. There's right there at the top, that's myself, my wife, Beth, the alumnus. My daughter, she went to UCLA in nursing, so we didn't convince her to go to Long Beach, but
we'll forgive her. We'll
forgive her. And if you can see just to the right of that, we're now proud grandparents. There was last December, there was a little trip close to Yosemite. You might recognize Half Dome. We like to do, not really camping, we're not that rough. We're not that good at roughing it, but we like doing hiking, camping, some sites. We live close to Morro Bay. I'm a tennis player, avid tennis player. We're Long Beach fans. This was our grandson's Winston's first volleyball game that we went to, and our daughter's dog there. So just kind of who we are. One of our favorite restaurants, if we go down to Long Beach, down there at the marina there, is kind of foggy, as you can see. It's sooner or later. So it's just a little bit of what we like to do and family. So we'll start out, and I just wanted to have like a bit of a message with engineering and education. They're intertwined, and I took some notable phrases that have stuck with me over time, and you might recognize one of the names on there, our volleyball coach, Alan Knight, which I think these apply throughout engineering and education and what you do in the workforce. And they're really good expressions. Avoid the noise. That's one of Alan Knight's. He's our men's volleyball coach, the national champions, and get 1% better every day. And those are particularly now with modern society and information bombardment. I think it's really good advice to getting focused on what you need to get done day-to-day life. Another volleyball coach has written a number of items about how to, get performance out of team members, and it goes along with getting 1% better every day. Get better at getting better, and that's really useful. Learn how to learn. I'm sure people have heard these type of expressions. But another one in terms of working with teammates and management is I thought was always good. He articulated, be what they need me to be. So, we all are of the, what do we have to do? What do we need from others? But to get things done in education, as teachers, as students, ask yourself to your coworkers, your students, what do they need you to be? And you can't be everything to everybody, right? But it's in having empathy with other people, because we don't accomplish anything without our coworkers and our students learning. And then here's one of mine, and this goes back. I took this from when I got elected to a board, and it was a very divisive town, and I made the point of there's like two sides, and we know where that comes with in society, right? There always seems like there's two sides out there, and it's not that simple. I think it's important every day. Speak to someone who does not agree with you, right? You can agree, you can spend all your time in these, I point out later, these echo chambers of people that agree with you, and frankly, ask yourself, what are you learning if they agree with you? And so I think we make a lot of progress by focusing on, in everything, technology as well, speaking to people that do not agree to you. That's the way you learn. So I brought this back, my educational experiences as we go through time. So prior to 82, I grew up in Reedley near Fresno, was a Cal Poly student, a Cal Poly tutor while I was there. And that was really helpful to tutor. And I'll talk about that in education. Reedley College is a JC there. And then I had a summer job out by Ridgecrest. So I took a class at a JC there. And then once I started working in 1982 rather, as a Long Beach State student, I also took a class at Long Beach City College, a business class at Santa Barbara City College, UCSB Extension, Cuesta College. While I was we lived in Long Beach, I tutored kids for 2 years in what was then the Spanish American Institute. It was like an after-school program, been a youth basketball coach. And then 20 years of maybe the best and worst corporate training. If anybody that works for a company invariably gets involved in some type of corporate training, and a lot of which is very, very good. And then since then to 2022, I by happenstance, I've done a part-time lab lecture at Cal Poly, more corporate training, and I've actually on the side, I like doing it. I've given tennis lessons sporadically. So I'm always interested in learning techniques. And then I have a question mark here, and we'll talk about education in 2042. So you see what I highlighted, we're all associated with Long Beach State, but what I highlighted here with junior colleges, these are just classes over time. I encourage people, subjects. I think my best without disparaging Cal Poly or Long Beach State, I think some of the best instruction I've gotten were at these junior college single class subjects that I took. And very good, you find very good, that's what they focus on, not that Long Beach doesn't or Cal Poly. Very good courses. Just take a class at your JC. I took a German class at Santa Barbara City, a business class at Santa Barbara City College, and they were very, very instructional. So I wanted to point that out. So as we go through time, so this is back in 1982 for all you, the youngins out there. This is what we used to look like somewhat. You had a professor or at the workplace with that overhead projector. You probably don't even know what those look like. You had to get these see-through plastic sets that you would go through and project and go from one to the other, roll in your slide projector and provide your information. So think about then, it was books. We learned with books, paper, we had typewriters, whatever they were. You got admitted based on SATs. I worked during school for $3 an hour, which, and then chalkboards and overhead projectors. We still use chalkboards, whiteboards. And then at the time, because I considered going to graduate school, Stanford was $11,000 a year. So think about that. I think part of the message is I could get through school working, supplementing pretty well back then. And then in 2002, I think it was really largely the same educationally. Wages doubled, but guess what? Stanford had tripled, right? Making it harder to get an education. And I think other than the media from, having better methods in the media and tools to display instruction, still not a lot has changing, but was starting to evolve. And so there's some other notes there. And then 2020, so now in 2020, as we know, we've had the transformational event of COVID, in our times. Books are online, which is good. We don't have to spend, the book prices became exorbitant, and devices, internet, and now remote learning. It started, but COVID really kicked that into full gear. The teachers, professors at every university, elementary schools had to pivot, as we know, in March of 2020. And within a month, think about it, within a month, had to relearn and rethink teaching methods. And GPA is used for admissions. We're not as reliant on SAT and ACTs due to bias concerns. Student wages, okay, they're doubled again. Look at Stanford. It's more than double. Now it's at 75K. Yeah, and so it just goes to show you, keeping the cost of education is a challenge. And so, we're transforming education and methods, and bias. Bias is now a subject matter of concern in all subjects, including engineering. It seemed like, from the mid-70s to maybe the mid-90s, bias was its own subject, right? Now we see and we have this discussion of how do we get bias out of our learning methods. And bias can be, it doesn't have to be negative. We want to reduce it for the purposes of fostering the education of knowledge. And then 2042, what will it look like then? Will student wages only be 24 hours? What will Stanford cost? My gosh. By then.
Should we even guess?
Should we even guess? So the machine learning is a field of itself. The sciences with the brain, with learning, and with computing, or the Moore's law, doubling capability every year. And we're coming in the field where machine learning, adaptive, agile books, we have adaptive books that change, right, from year to year. Will books have their own machine learning? Will there be adaptive, agile grading? Will grading adjust based on the person? I think we're headed towards that. It doesn't have to be good or bad or negative. It's just, how can we use should focus on how can we use the technology to enhance our education. And there's one thought here, teachers could be super teachers. And then we've heard about physical brick and mortar learning is better. We want that human touch. And then how does that stratification work in the elementary, high schools, and universities for how they deliver that education? It's in the end, right? It's all about learning, and there's the science of learning, and the very idea of learning will change in the next 20 years drastically, because there's so many vehicles for providing learning, which makes you wonder, why did Stanford keep more than doubling when the amount of vehicles to learn is increasing? So that's just an interesting question for me. I don't know that I can't answer this. I can't answer other than maybe branding. So, and I love Stanford. So any questions so far? Any from the panel or any thoughts?
We do have a question that came in from the audience, and I don't know if you want to answer it now or maybe wait till later in the presentation. But someone asks, I came from a manufacturing high school, but went into electrical engineering at Long Beach as I got interest in PCB design. Is there a job or position that integrates electrical engineering and manufacturing engineering?
So yes, there's an industry. So I'm in aerospace, and in printed circuit boards specifically, that is something Raytheon has a huge. Raytheon concentrated their manufacturing back around 2010 or so in one site. There are still other sites in Mississippi, Forest, Mississippi. It's right in the middle of a forest, and it's huge modern manufacturing facility. So printed circuit boards, there are vendors across the US that provide them from very rudimentary. They have what are known as circuit layers that can go from very small 2 layers up to complex boards that could be more than 30 layers and so anyway, the question is the positions for that. So each of those companies that manufacture those, builds those, they have manufacturing engineers, and that are rooted, they do the process of the production of those boards. So they have manufacturing engineers that may have an electrical background. The design of those, they're not necessarily going to do, but companies like Raytheon, we have multiple areas throughout the country where electrical engineers design, create the schematics, and do the layout that is then given to those manufacturers. So hopefully I'm answering the question, but I've seen electrical engineers that go into the circuit board design or manufacturing because there's a need from that side of the industry, and there's the design side. And so that I've seen designers that come from a computer background because it's computer related tools. So hopefully that answers the question.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And, I think it's just really interesting going into what you're talking about now, like with education, getting different perspectives and coming, taking experiences from one place and what you were learning one place, and taking experiences when you're learning from another place and melding them together. There's endless possibilities, right?
Right. It's just endless. And I'll talk a little bit about in the next couple of slides. And here's what we looked like back in 1982. We were in this office. We had these books, binders. I know there's not much in that one binder, but we had 200, 300 page reports that we sent to our customers. It was proposals. It was paper. We had whiteout to correct changes. You didn't have all these edit functions. And then in 2002, we still got books, but on via the internet and personal computers. We've been incorporating online information, and the simulation tools that we use in industry, they're now, I call them second generation simulation tools. Electrical engineers, we used to have salespeople, we would get these hardbound data books. It was tough for someone like me, old school, to let go of those. So used to looking for information, and there were some classic ones. This is Texas Instruments would have a whole volume that every electrical engineer pretty much had. And now, right, you show this to a student now who was born after 2000, and they're like, what? Why would you ever do that? You can get it all at the touch of the hand. There's a little bit of comfort in that, but you've got that information available, and then, and so using that. So the common majors then, electrical engineering, mechanical, aeronautical, computer science was in its infancy. And then 2020, so we've got online books, PCs, iPhones, devices, and now we're doing remote in just the last 2 years, remote virtual work. Well, these simulation tools, there's so many programs, SPICE associated with circuit design, MATLAB has blossomed, there's new versions every year. ECAD, this is electronic circuit aided design that one of the students or visitors refer to, versions of Office, programming languages. So these tools are all getting every year, upgrade the generation of the simulation pool, finite element analysis for mechanical engineers, for thermal and structural type analysis. The tool sets get increasing capability. And so now the majors is, we have the traditional ones, but in a lot of schools, instead of electrical and computer science, there's actual computer engineering. Aeronautical is branched into, there's aerospace engineering, and Long Beach does this as well. And I'll highlight these new ones. We never had biomedical engineering in general. There's these multidiscipline engineering programs, systems engineering. In the past, back in the early 80s, before you became a system engineer, you worked in a specialty maybe for 3, 4, 5, 10 years, and then accumulated enough knowledge to go into system engineering. The information, the knowledge, the off-the-shelf types of hardware you can now construct into a deliverable system, whether it's an automotive industry or telecom or aerospace, is embedded systems engineering. If you think about the natural successor in education to the robotics, the proliferation of robotics programs in schools, and I call it put a bunch of stuff together engineering. And so the fundamentals that you learn, going into these is still true, and they have to be emphasized. It's just that there's in the workplace, there's so many programs and applications that you can use to do your design work. And so if you look to 2042, like in education, we're going to have more adaptive agile work processes, adaptive agile work products, machine learning incorporated in design. Say I do a design today, and there's a machine learning program. There's a machine learning program. So in the future, what will they need me to do? If they can write an algorithm that takes my knowledge and learns from it, could they learn faster than I learn? And then we ask ourselves, and this is more than just an engineering education, what will the humans actually do? Alexa, go design my airplane. And you go off, and do we just all sit on the couch and watch? So,
man, sounds great.
It sounds great. Ramifications are, and there's a caution in there, right? We have to, and that goes to the fundamentals in each of these subjects and in our workplace of that knowledge is important, because ultimately we always want to have that decision making with ourselves. That's what we have to, and we have to make intelligent decisions. So we have to be cognizant, and it's important that constant learning and increasing our knowledge, regardless of the way that the tools in our education and work increase their capability. It does appear, and we all have that, I think, angst of getting overwhelmed by it. And so some notes here. I just wrote some notes. COVID, I think we all dealt with. What does it mean for work relationships if you're not in the office together at the water cooler but remote? And this is something I wonder if during COVID the freeways cleared out in April of 2020. So if 50% of the workforce is working remote or virtual, then how did the freeways start getting congested again? I always ask myself that.
Me too, every day.
I don't understand it. They're all at home. How can they be congested? But they seem to be. That's another study. And this is something I'll provide under the guise of suggestions with your coworkers in education. we have email, we have texting, and I ask myself, I see people and myself go back and forth, texting back and forth, and you're using your hands, and a half an hour goes by, and I'm like, why didn't someone just pick up the phone and do what you could do in 5 minutes that took back and forth over an hour to type out? And that, I say that as an example, is information and the fast way we can get information in the media actually making us at times more effective. If you can just walk over in 5 minutes and conduct the back and forth in person. So it's something to think about. I think we've all been on these. I tell people in my section at work that if an email thread gets more than 3 or 4 long, stop. Consider the number of people on it, and consider what you're trying to get out of it, because they take on a life of their own. And particularly in engineering, where you have technical discussions, and think about it from say a manager or program manager or your supervisor. Think about if they have 100 emails a day, and there's 10 people working for them, and they have 10, and they're copying them on that. Does your job, and do they have the capacity to deal with 200 emails a day? It's just, right. It's outpacing their ability to process all that information. They're getting, I went to work and I read a bunch of email. What did you do?
Read a bunch of emails.
What did you do? So, and it's a balance, right? We want to communicate and keep everybody, so we copy the entire University of Long Beach on an email. And so you go back and forth, and you have to ask yourself, are you being effective? I go back to what Alan Knight talked about, avoiding the noise.
I actually have a question from the audience that might be a good fit here, which is there a space or a need in the industry for soft skill training or non-program learning and development? And if so, do you know what those career titles are?
So there is. So in each major, and I just found out recently at Cal Poly that they had stopped teaching like a engineering communications class.
Oh.
Or it was an associated different engineering major class. So where I took multiple disciplines, they were more focused in just that major, which surprised me. But yes, so in education, it's really important. And back in the 80s, I had to read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, and I think the book was, I forget the book, was Brave New World, and those futuristic books back in 1980, which you might say they're OBE for some of our younger readers, but it's good to go back and look at the futuristic projections at that time. But they were focused on, right, these discussions of information and using it, and what will happen in the future, and how can it be constructive, and it's communication. So soft skills number 1 is communications, and hopefully everybody's taking a communications class or speech class, of which I'm talking a lot, so I'm not learning anything while I'm talking. And listening is the most key skill you can do. I was taught once, if you hear something, it's no problem to repeat back to the person and say, I want to understand, correct, is this what you meant? People may have had these exercises where you have 5 people and one says 1-to-1, and you go down the chain, and by you get to the 5th one, it's funny what the message has become. So those soft skills, I think, are empathy, communications, listening, and are there positions open for them? So I think corporations have them and struggle with that, because the leaders in management try to, they're, say, someone that's an engineer and has gone up and become a vice president or president, and they've used their engineering skills along their way, and they've had soft skills training. They're not maybe necessarily specifically trained in that, but they assimilate those skills. And companies have HR, and hopefully I think it's good for an HR organization, any company, to take on the role of an education, I think sometimes they're perceived and their job role becomes, I'll call it adjudication and, policy implementation. And I think those soft skill training is educational. Every company struggles with it. There's the field of that. There's experts in communication, and everyone should take those. Engineers particularly can look at those classes and say, oh, that's for a liberal arts student, or that's for, but to be successful as a communicator and decision making, they're so important because you collaborate. So you want to be able to listen to your coworkers. You want to communicate effectively. The faster you can communicate as a team, the more you can come to a decision. And you might fail, and then you get to the next decision, and you fail, and then that's how you develop a product. It comes via failure. Failure is okay. It seems sometimes it's always been that way. Management's a little bit intolerant of failure because there's failure equals cost, but that's how you learn. So hopefully that answered your question. And what specific positions, it varies from how companies run. I don't know how Google's deals with soft skills. I don't know if their soft skill is having pizza every day till you work more hours. I don't. But that's not soft skills. That goes along with culture. Culture isn't. I don't think culture is soft skills. Soft skills are, teaching how to communicate. I think that could be reinforced more and more. Communicate, listening, and communication techniques. And we tend to say, okay, do I really use that? And you get that class, and then try to learn 3 things and use it. You take a lot of it and you roll your eyes, but a lot of it is effective. Hopefully that answers the question.
Absolutely.
All right. And then, so in the future, right, effective engineering managers, supervisors, teachers will become more, I think, more facilitators, because even they can't possess all the information. They have to guide. So in the future, right, they have to be effective, they'll become facilitators. The manager term conveys that boss subservient type relationship versus facilitator. It's polite, and it has a better connotation. So maybe that term will be removed from the workforce someday. There won't be a manager in the matrix organization. There'll be facilitators. And the physical and virtual sites is huge challenge, which I'll talk about. I know it's at the university and elsewhere. So education in the future, connect with students or coworkers, think about the psychology of distance learning. These are the problems that emerged from virtual that COVID sped up. Isolation and that sense of isolation, and maybe, I believe, created and magnified, personal echo chambers. We can find all these echo chambers online that reinforce our own opinion. And it goes back to speaking to those that disagree. And congregation, how do we congregate? You want to congregate. As a lecturer, the students would come into a lab, and I'd say, okay, they'd come in, sit with their friends, and I'd say, okay, everybody rotate one seat over, so that you're forced. In industry, you can't choose your friends. Sometimes you can, but so you're forced to work with people that are a different background. And I haven't always adhered to that, but I did that because I didn't want people working with their friends. And B, they might not be friends by the end of the lab, so you never know. All right, and so this is the challenge. We're going from brick and mortar to virtual and distance. So virtual and distance commuting. Now, what else have I got? So, and I thought about, as I was doing this, the difference between knowledge and information. Information to me always had a good connotation. Information is facts provided or learned about something or someone. And so now, right in the modern age, I don't have to tell anybody, are facts, right? We're, each echo chamber that exists, and we argue about facts. So that goes to talk to someone who doesn't agree with you and listen. Knowledge to me is the key for work and what we seek. We use information, knowledge, and we need to know what's factual. Knowledge is the pursuit of not information, but it's familiar subject matter. You know, Alexa's doing all these calculations. We need to know what Alexa's doing inside Alexa. We need to know the electrical fundamentals, the mechanical fundamentals, the machine learning fundamentals that are getting programmed in those devices. And that's, you know, what a successful institution, teacher, manager will emphasize is the continual increase of knowledge. At Raytheon, we build aerospace products. We build radar systems, electronic warfare systems. We build missiles. We want them to be successful because there is a mission. We build engines. We want engines to be as efficient as possible. So it's that even the tools with all these 5th generation devices are built on the knowledge. And I can tell you from my experience teaching at Cal Poly that it's becoming difficult. Knowledge that I expected students to have in 2012, they have. And today they come into class, and even though they have high SATs, or they don't have it, they have high GPAs, and they're smart, they're really smart, they're smart at every university. There's subject matter that they used to have that they don't have. And so as you get to these advanced courses, I think instructors have to also weave in the fundamental knowledge, not just can you use the tool sets, but what is the core basic knowledge that's available, and how do you teach that? And so that's a big key in the workplace.
We have another question, and I wanted to kind of insert it here just because I think what you're talking about with knowledge is kind of maybe speaking to this. But their question is, with computer science and AI becoming more advanced, do you see the usefulness of engineering dropping?
So no, I think the usefulness of engineering and maybe what we think about engineering is changing. I can tell you, I mentioned robotics. I think robotics started because it was hands-on in high schools and it's proliferated, and it's really good. I think at the same time, I'll say students learn how to, I'll call it, put stuff together and integrate, because there's so many applications they can do, and they can build up a drone or something. And that's, to me, that's a little bit akin to your auto mechanic now has sophisticated tools, and he diagnoses your cars better. And so engineers have to be, I think as a society, we have to be cautious of the engineers. That's mechanics. Why do they need to go to Long Beach State to put all that stuff together and make a drone when you got all that information out there? You should, and schools have to revisit what they do with that. And I think they are. I mentioned, I don't know if it was the past slide, maybe I went over it. So I mentioned here, and this is how engineering is evolving. There was an embedded systems engineering, general and biomedical. There'll be, what would computer science is still computer science, computer engineering. What will machine learning be? Will it be science, or will it actually be engineering? What are you doing with artificial intelligence? It's implemented via computers. It's implemented via algorithms. That's computer science. So it comes under computer science. And there's decision making. So it's so many disciplines going into that, and a lot of that advanced study goes into PhD programs that I'm just not familiar with. So there is the need, right? As the population has grown, our issues are become more. There's contentious issues of resources, right? We know in the world where the population is increasing, if it keeps increasing, we need additional knowledge to cope with that, right? We don't want it. It seems we get, right, we're worried about getting overwhelmed. It manifests itself in so many ways. So all I can say is it's so important that we all emphasize the need for, increasing our knowledge. And so that we can make decisions as a society, as an engineering, as a university. And yes, the engineering specialties will change, but the knowledge, I think the knowledge base, like anything, as research is done, the knowledge base increases. So I hope that answers the question. But yeah, we do need engineers, and in a certain sense, companies like Raytheon, you know, hire engineers for skill sets of tools in a way, you know, engineers can kind of, I hate the word kind of, engineers can perform a little bit like maybe the auto mechanic, where he's got these sophisticated tools, but he still has to make decisions, right? You still got to have the knowledge, you know, how does a piston engine work? How does a Tesla battery transmission system from the battery to the transmission system work? It's all important. So it keeps increasing. And then I'll talk about recruiting a little bit. If we students, so I recruit a lot. I love recruiting. I review resumes. I love telling students what I think they're doing wrong or right on their resumes. It's based on what I look for. So in 1982, what did they look for? We want you to be able to solve problems. That your knowledge, we talked about that. And then there were skills and the tools that they had. They're more advanced now. And communicate, those soft skills, communication skills. Take a speech class, take a communications class, you know, practice and listen, and you need to learn how to communicate. And in 2022, what are the skills? It really hasn't changed. Problem solving, knowledge. You're being hired to solve a problem. Everybody on this call has had a job, and part of your job is solving a problem. And skills and tools. And now the tools, the difference is the capability is so advanced. It's so advanced. But there's also jobs and careers associated with, you know, developing those tools as well. And then communications. And again, the media there, the media for communications, the speed is there. So it's easy to say slow down. I think from age, you know, 3 to 12, maybe we should prohibit devices in the hands of kids, that sort of thing. But, you know, career fairs will change. And, you know, we don't want to have to fly people there. It costs money. We can do it virtual. It's a little bit, it's in person. There's that personal effect. How do you combine in the future? How do you combine with that? You know, do you give the resume into a machine learning program and they spit out who gets the job type of thing? It's gonna evolve. And there's, right, if we're not getting on airplanes or cars to go to a career fair, we're saving resources. I still don't understand why the 405 is crowded when people are working at home. How is that? It should be having a green impact. I don't understand that. So any other questions on that vein?
Let's see. I am not seeing any coming in from the audience right now.
Okay. Well, let me go on. Just, you know, the workplace, for those of you that were alive or in that 1980 to 2000, the classic prior, you know, top-down work structure in companies, it still exists. And, you know, what were issues? You know, resentment, confusion, isolation, frustration. So how do you avoid those or rectify those? It's the supervisor and team members communicating, teaming, clarity, you know, getting clarity on what do you expect me to do? What do I think I should do? And conveying those. And it requires, I think sometimes, I mentioned echo chambers, we don't like confrontation. And I think we should embellish confrontation, you know, to resolve and to grow. And then as in 2022 now, in COVID, remote virtual work, it recreated different types of resentment, confusion. I can tell you, employees working at home versus necessary, I cringed when I heard the governor use the term essential workers. Imagine you were 12% of the workforce and you were essential, and you were, I don't know what, if you did, you were not an essential work. You're not essential, but I get it that nurses are essential, but so is everybody else. I hated from the get-go that. I got that, we all remember, it's still embedded in our minds. You know, you're not essential. You own a shoe store, and Walmart is suddenly essential, and your shoe store is not essential. And I know a shoe store owner, and he told me, well, we just told people and opened the back door. So, but that was it. even our leaders, and it's not trying to bag on any one leader, he got caught in that essential work, and we were grateful for them. But think about the other 80%. We have to think about those things. I wouldn't have used necessary or essential. I would have used some other word. Maybe the panel can come up with a better word that could have been used, because it's not easy sometimes, right? And then we get locked into that, right? We get locked into that. And so again, communication, teaming, clarity, and I'll put and anti-bias, right? In the 70s, for those of you that were alive, that sort of social work in terms of research started, and over the years we've been incorporating how to and it does, and I think people see the word bias and they equate with race, but it's not. Bias is so many other, and it's like a bad word, and it is a negative connotation, but bias can mean a lot of things, and we want to remove bias from learning and working, because bias can create errors, right? If we put it in an engineering scientific antiseptic type of connotation, that's why we want to avoid it. And unfortunately, I think with a lot of mainstream social discussion, people react, they trench up when those discussions occur, and it goes to confronting issues. So
now, really quick, if you could go back for just one moment. A question came in. I noticed it wasn't on your list there, but somebody wanted to know, do you think that the concept of marketing is crucial in finding a job in the industry nowadays?
Yeah, it always, right, you have to sell yourself, sort of, right? The old school. I don't want to bag on Harvard. I went to Harvard, therefore I'll get hired because I know the hired, that sort of thing. Those connections, marketing it's a fancy way of saying, selling yourself, and don't be afraid. I look at resumes, and for engineers, every resume has at the bottom has the same 12 listed skills that they've all learned at every university in the US, and you haven't differentiated yourself, because I see it means nothing to me. Because it's not a waste of space, but in that resume, I'll call it the marketing, think in terms of kindergartens. I use this tool to do this. I think students and even workers, explaining what you did with a skill and applied your knowledge to create something. It's difficult sometimes for us to create sentences that way. A, you may not want to brag, it may not be natural, and B, you may not even think of it. We think in terms of, right, we speak a little bit still. I'm trying to get in the right word, stochastically, or right, in a chopping way. And so just saying that I use this tool to create this product. I use this finite element analysis program to model a beam that made out of a composite that increased the strength in my study or in my work. And then an employer says, oh, that's what we need you to do. So, but that's in terms of marketing. Yeah, you have to market yourself, but marketing is useless without a target audience. I've had a marketing study at Cuesta. I had a marketing class. I had some time, and so, right, you can take marketing, but marketing is useless without a target audience. I think Coke, Pepsi, Procter and Gamble know that, right? They've got PhDs doing that stuff. So yes, you should market yourself, develop your knowledge, and then if you know what you want to do, then market yourself. And it is difficult to know the audience. Corporations have, and sometimes they're not as smart as you think, right? So corporations have that knowledge. In the case of Raytheon, it'd be the government for contracts. In the case of Tesla, it's the consumer, and so forth. And so I would just say, and then you might ask, how do I know my audience? You have to ask. Talk to someone who doesn't agree with you. It goes back to that. And don't worry about, be polite, be a polite pest, right? You do it in a polite manner. I don't understand and I'd like some help. And you're gonna get, I hate to say it, you're gonna get the door softly, closed on you, and that's okay. People don't do that necessarily out of a negative reason. they have their own constraints, and just, you have to be a bit of a, I shouldn't use the word past, you have to be persistent and persistent. So, and I'll say it's okay to be uncomfortable. We should all stream to be, all right, we like comfort things, right? Pot pies and whatever, and certain drinks, or maybe not pot pie, maybe it's something else, right? And so, utilize congregation, and definitely don't congregate in echo chambers. Turn off, right? Turn that off, decompose yourself, not decompose, but engage yourself in that. And I think that's what the workforce needs, and students need. And it's tough, it's not easy. So this was, I opened with this. I just, if there's any kind of suggestions, find ways to avoid the noise and just learn. You don't have to learn everything in a day. We have projects that go for 3 years, and they don't get done in a week. And then they get done by getting workers developing knowledge and creating a little bit every day, and learning how to learn. That's the key thing. When I teach, as you're a student, I want the student, if I'm a successful teacher, I don't do anything. I'm like Alexa. I tell the students, well, explain it to your partner. And then by doing that, you learn. Anybody that's tutored know that. And then this last one, if we can all, what do they need me to be? Hopefully I've been what you need me to be today. Otherwise I failed. You didn't learn, I failed, right? I did all the talking. I didn't learn anything. So any other questions? I wrote on here, in terms of change, look at this, all right? Every 20 years, it was the 49ers. In 2002 was Go Beach, right? Now it's Go Sharks, and we can have our own conversation. The 2042, what will be are we going to be the robots? Are we going to be what are we going to be? The Argonauts?
I think I'll keep with Go Beach, but so yeah, as we're wrapping it up, just some things from the audience. Someone suggested mandatory in-person workers for the term. So I thought that was clever. And then also somebody wanted to know, for your resume, are group projects or individual projects better? I heard group projects are good because they show teamwork and leadership.
So when I recruit, I don't want to call it a red flag, but it's my possible bias. I don't like group projects that get beyond a certain point. I think it's easy for a student to have their work, I'll call it, get watered down a little bit. There are projects that need group projects. You want an active role. If you're going to have an active role in that project, and not just as, I'm the getting people together, then yes. It's hard to do an individual product, right? Where do you start? And you don't, a 2-person, 3-person, I think those are great projects. That's my recommendation, because I think you push yourself and you own more of the work individually. Not that that's not in a group project, that's good, but things may get allocated to you. So it depends on your level of activity. And that's just my suggestion. I as a recruiter, someone who's done an individual project, typically they can explain the subject matter a little bit better. And when I delve into someone that maybe has done a group project, they'll say, we did this and we did that. And as a recruiter, you're trying to delve into what they actually at that level contributed in their knowledge. And so it can become and sometimes they have. I've had interviews with people in group projects, and they said we did. And as I delve into it, they actually were the major contributor. They're very humble. So there's no one particular answer. I prefer limited amount of people in a group project.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then someone else is a little bit concerned about internships. They ask, is it possible to land an entry-level engineering position after completing your degree program, despite never completing an internship prior to graduation?
Yes, absolutely. So you have a resume, And I get this all the time. It's tough. I personally prefer not to hire anyone that's not a junior because of the skill set is still maturing. And the likelihood they'll go somewhere else. I want to hire someone the junior year because my odds of retaining him the senior year are, it's an engineering decision. So your education is your internship. As engineers, you're going to have a lab. When you write that report, make it a professional report. That is what you do in industry. If you're a mechanical and you're doing a thermal analysis with a finite, that was your report. You make that as professional as you can, and you list that under your skill sets, because that's what you do as an engineer. You're going to use the same tool, and maybe ask your professor, hey, do you have like another project that you'd suggest I do? And so I know I think employees internships represent familiarity with an industry. That's good. There's no getting around that. It's just, you're going to be a beginning engineer. How do I act like that? You act like that by making your coursework your internships. You're learning knowledge, applying as you go through it. How do I apply it? How do I apply this lab? How do I make it professional? And when you get to the interview, you explain your knowledge and skill set. To me, it's just as good. A correlate of that is I see resumes where people are in 5 clubs, and I get a little bit nervous that they're spending too much time in clubs. So, and that's part of the soft skills. You gotta mingle with your students and all that. You are there to gain that knowledge and the use of your skills. It's a balance. So don't be discouraged. Create your resume to look. Your classes and your labs are your course or your internships.
Great.
Were there any chats that I missed, or I didn't listen well enough to answer correctly?
No, I think that was great. And we're about past time. So I would just say, are there any closing pieces of advice that you would give any 49er listening in on what it takes to make it in electrical engineering? Any closing words of wisdom?
I think it's just you went into a profession or a field of engineering, and if you truly love it and enjoy problem solving, that's to me what's fun about engineering. I don't think I'm the most knowledgeable. I like seeing problems solved and contributing to that. If you like problem solving, just love, have that love and knowledge, and as you go, you are a professional. I know you're a student, but you are a professional, and particularly as you come out of high school and all that. But as you get into your junior, senior year, you're now a professional. You don't have to walk around with a briefcase, but act that way. So what's the old adage? Anybody could be the president by being elected president. And I'm not trying to go through history, but because as soon as you're president, you become presidential. You're a working engineer, and so getting there is not. It's not really acting the part; it's being the part. And you have more knowledge and capability than what you think you have sometimes. So
wonderful. All right. Well, Joe, thank you so much. It's been a great presentation. If anyone was hoping to get in touch with you, ask you some questions, or follow up with your presentation or resume help, how might they best reach out to you?
You can. I'll give my personal email is Joe Sparks. I think it wasn't on there. Joe Sparks LO10@gmail.com. And I'm fine with my work address, Joseph_B_Sparks. I can probably just put it in the chat room. Let me do that.
Sure, yeah. And
let me use technology.
For those of you who are on the chat here. Alana's went ahead and put his personal Gmail in the chat. And Joe, feel free to pop your work one in there as well.
Yeah, and I mentioned, don't be afraid to ping me, more than one time. It's okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Joe, so much. We can't thank you enough for sharing your wisdom here, and for promoting the importance of education in the field. So we'll say goodbye. So thank you so much to everyone who's tuned in. Joe, if you could hang back with us while
Sure.
everyone filters out.
All
And
right.
thank you everyone so much for joining in.
Thank you, everyone.